Olivia Morgan never expected her evening to end the way it did. She had gone to her company's annual work party with good intentions. Say hello to coworkers, stay for an hour, then head straight home. The event took place in a well-known hotel ballroom in downtown Seattle. Filled with bright lights, loud music, and people trying to look more relaxed than they really were. Olivia tried to keep up, smiling and making conversation, but the energy drained her faster than she expected. After long weeks at work and her husband Daniel traveling almost constantly, she had little strength left for social events. She stuck to one drink, then another half, trying not to look awkward. The champagne made her head a little light, but the exhaustion made it worse. By the time she stepped outside the hotel, the cold air hit her so sharply she had to hold on to the railing to steady herself. Cars rushed by on the busy street. Lights flickering, crowds moving in different directions. Olivia pulled her coat tighter, wishing Daniel was home. He was attending a business conference across the country and had sent her a quick text hours earlier. Something short, like busy day. Talk later. She didn't blame him. He always worked hard. But tonight she felt the weight of that distance in a new way. She tried calling a cab, but the app kept glitching. Standing there alone, she felt tired, unbalanced, and slightly embarrassed at herself. She closed her eyes for a second, hoping the dizziness would pass. Then she heard a familiar voice. "Olivia, is that you?" She opened her eyes and turned. Standing a few feet away was Ethan, her husband's stepson. He lived in the city and was driving past when he spotted her standing alone on the sidewalk. For a moment, she wasn't sure if she was imagining things. Ethan usually kept himself busy, working long hours at his tech job and visiting only occasionally. He was 27, calm, quiet, the responsible type who rarely appeared without a purpose. He wore a simple black jacket and jeans, looking casual but put together. He stepped closer, studying her carefully. "Are you okay? You look a little unsteady." Olivia felt her face warm not from the alcohol, but from embarrassment. "I'm fine," she insisted softly. "Just tired." The party was too loud. Ethan didn't look convinced. "You shouldn't be out here alone. It's late." She tried to straighten herself, but her legs felt heavier than she expected. The city noise felt too bright, and the wind stung her eyes. Suddenly, she felt like every emotion she'd been ignoring all month was pressing against her chest. She opened her mouth to insist she was fine again, but Ethan gently placed a steadying hand on her arm, stopping her from stumbling. "Let me help you," he said simply. There was no judgment in his tone, just concern. "I can drive you home. My car is right there." Olivia hesitated. She didn't want to burden him or create an awkward moment. She also didn't want him thinking she couldn't handle herself. But the cold wind, the blurry lights, and the sinking feeling in her stomach reminded her she didn't have many options. And Ethan looked too steady for her to refuse. "Okay," she said quietly. Ethan guided her toward his car parked near the curb. His movements were careful, respectful, like he didn't want to make her feel small. He opened the passenger door for her, making sure she sat safely before buckling her seatbelt. She let out a slow breath, grateful for the warmth inside the car. As Ethan got in and started the engine, the soft hum of the heater filled the silence. Olivia looked out the window at the fading hotel lights. She felt strange, safe, grateful, but also unsettled in a way she didn't expect. It wasn't anything romantic or inappropriate. It was simply the shock of being helped kindly and without hesitation. She hadn't felt that from anyone in a long time. "You really don't have to do this," she said as the car pulled into traffic. "I could have called a cab." "You tried," Ethan said, "and you didn't look steady." "I couldn't just drive past you." His words warmed her. For years, she had learned to be the strong, unorganized.com reliable. Daniel depended on her emotional steadiness, her ability to handle everything at home while he focused on work. It wasn't that he didn't care. He simply lived in his own busy world. Tonight, after weeks of barely seeing him, Olivia felt the loneliness sharper than usual. And now, sitting in a warm car with someone paying genuine attention, she felt almost fragile. The city lights reflected softly on the windshield as they drove. Ethan didn't push her to talk, but she felt the silence filling with unspoken things. Her shoulders relaxed, though she was still slightly embarrassed. "I probably look ridiculous," as she murmured. Ethan shook his head. "You look tired. That's all." The simplicity of those words made her eyes sting unexpectedly. She turned her head toward the window so he wouldn't notice. She hated crying, especially for reasons she couldn't fully explain. "You've had a long year," he added, his voice gentle. "Anyone can see that." Those words felt too accurate, like he saw something she had been hiding, even from herself. Olivia didn't respond, but something inside her softened. She realized she had been carrying too much for too long, pretending she was fine. Within minutes, they reached her quiet suburban neighborhood. Ethan parked in her driveway and stepped out to help her again, holding the door open as she got out. The air here was colder, stiller. Porch lights glowed faintly, casting soft shadows as she stood on the walkway. Ethan looked at her with a mix of concern and something she couldn't identify, something simply human. Their eyes met. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't forbidden. It was an understanding, a moment that said, "Someone sees you." "Thank you," she whispered. "Really? Any time," he said softly. For a second, Olivia felt a pull in her chest, a reminder of how long it had been since someone had looked at her with that kind of concern. Not desire, not pity, just care. She stepped back toward the door. Ethan watched her until she was safely inside, then walked back to his car as the door closed behind her. Olivia leaned against it, her heart beating faster than she expected. She didn't know why this night felt like the beginning of something. Something emotional, something confusing, something she never planned for. But she knew one thing: nothing felt the same anymore. The quiet inside Ethan's car felt almost too calm after the loud hotel ballroom. Olivia leaned her head against the cool window, watching the blur of lights pass by. Her breath was steady now, but her thoughts were a mess, floating between exhaustion, embarrassment, and a strange warmth she didn't fully understand. She hadn't meant for anyone to see her like that, especially not Ethan, who always seemed so composed, so sure of everything. Ethan glanced at her briefly before focusing back on the road. His expression was calm, but there was concern in the tight line of his jaw. "You're safe now," he said gently. "Just relax. I've got the drive covered." Olivia managed a weak smile. "I'm not usually like this." "I know," he replied. "You don't have to explain." That simple sentence made something inside her loosen. Most people wanted explanations. Most people expected her to justify every moment she wasn't perfectly polished. But Ethan's tone held no judgment, only understanding. She hadn't realized how much she missed being understood. The city grew quieter as they left downtown. The tall buildings faded behind them, replaced by small shops and empty streets. Olivia's head felt a little clearer, but her heart felt heavier. The silence worked on her, pulling up thoughts she'd been pushing away for months. "I didn't want you to see me like this," she confessed suddenly, her voice soft. "I'm just tired." "Everyone gets tired," Ethan said. "It doesn't make you weak." Olivia looked at him. His profile in the dim light looked calm, steady, someone her life had brushed against only in passing. But tonight, for reasons she didn't completely understand, he felt like the only steady thing in her world. "You've been carrying a lot," he added, still watching the road. She swallowed hard. "How would you know that?" "Because you don't talk like someone who gets taken care of," he said. "You talk like someone who takes care of everyone else." His words hit deeper than she expected. Olivia stared at her hands, twisting them in her lap. She didn't want to cry in his car. She didn't want to fall apart. But the truth had a way of pushing itself out when a person finally felt safe. "Daniel is a good man," she said quickly, almost defensively. "He's just busy. His work is demanding. He works hard for us." "Not judging him," Ethan replied gently. "I'm just saying you don't have to pretend everything is easy." Olivia opened her mouth, then closed it again. She wasn't sure what to say. No one ever told her she didn't have to carry everything alone. Daniel loved her in his own way. She knew that. But love without presence could feel like a quiet house, big, beautiful, and lonely. She stared out the window again. Streetlights flickered past like a trail of stars. "Sometimes," she whispered, "I feel invisible." Ethan didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice was softer than before. "You're not invisible. Not even close." Her chest tightened painfully. There was no flirtation in his tone, no inappropriate meaning. It was just honesty, the kind she hadn't heard in a long time. She took a shaky breath, blinking back tears she didn't want him to see. "How did you even find me tonight?" she asked, trying to lighten the moment. "I was driving home from the gym," he said. "I saw you leaning on the railing outside the hotel. You looked like you needed help." Livia let out a breath of disbelief. "Of all nights." "Maybe it wasn't a coincidence," Ethan said quietly. She didn't know what that meant. But the way he said it made her chest flutter with something she immediately tried to push away. She wasn't supposed to feel anything unfamiliar. She wasn't supposed to feel anything at all. But the night felt fragile. Like they were speaking truths usually hidden beneath layers of routine. Another stretch of silence filled the car. But this one felt different, less heavy, more thoughtful. "I used to think marriage meant you always felt chosen," Olivia said suddenly. "Safe, seen, and now?" Ethan asked, "Now I feel like I'm standing next to someone who's always looking at something else," she admitted. "I don't blame him. I just miss him." Ethan's hands tightened around the steering wheel. "It's okay to want more. Wanting more doesn't make you ungrateful." Her breath caught. She wasn't used to being told her feelings were valid. She wasn't used to her heart being heard, he continued, voice steady but quiet. "You're the kind of person people lean on. Someone who listens, supports, keeps everything running. But you deserve someone asking about you too." She looked at him again, surprised by his insight. "How do you know that?" "Because I've watched you," he said simply. "Not in a strange way, just I see how much effort you put into everyone else. I always wondered if anyone was doing the same for you." A small, soft ache settled behind her ribs. The honesty in his voice warmed her more than the heater blowing through the vents. Before she could reply, Ethan turned onto her street. The neighborhood was quiet, the houses lined with soft porch lights that glowed against the dark sky. As he parked in her driveway, the engine hummed for a few seconds before he switched it off. The stillness felt heavier now. Ethan stepped out first and walked round to open her door. He offered his hand, and for a second Olivia hesitated before placing her hand in his. His grip was warm and steady. It felt like an anchor in a world where she had felt adrift for too long. She stepped out slowly, breathing in the cold night air. The wind brushed her hair across her face, and Ethan gently moved it aside so she could see. The gesture was quick and respectful. But it sent a quiet spark through her chest. "Thank you," she said, barely above a whisper. "You don't have to thank me," he replied softly. "I'm just glad I saw you in time." They stood there under the porch light, the world around them completely still. The air felt charged not with romance, not with anything forbidden, but with something painfully human. Connection, understanding, a reminder that being seen could feel like a gentle shock to the heart. She stepped back first, breaking the moment. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Olivia," he said, his voice warm but steady. She turned the doorknob, then paused, not looking back, just listening to the quiet behind her. She heard Ethan walk slowly toward his car. She heard him pause just for a second before opening the door. She didn't know why that tiny hesitation made her heart ache. When she finally closed the door, it felt like the whole night collapsed into her chest at once. Exhaustion, guilt, gratitude, confusion. But the strongest feeling wasn't any of those. It was the realization that someone had noticed her pain without her having to explain a single thing. And that frightened her more than anything. The week after that strange night moved quickly. Yet every hour felt slightly heavier for Olivia. The world around her continued at its normal pace emails. Meetings, grocery trips, small chores, but something inside her felt unsettled, like a quiet storm she couldn't name. She tried to shake off the memory of Ethan helping her home, but it lingered in the corners of her mind. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because the moment had felt too honest, too warm compared to the cold routine she lived in. For days she kept waiting for the memory to fade. But every time the house felt too silent, or every time she noticed Daniel buried in work again, the night replayed in small pieces Ethan's steady voice, his calm presence, the strange sense of being understood. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself it was just exhaustion mixed with emotion. And yet, her heart refused to let it slip away. Daniel returned 3 days later, rolling his suitcase through the door with a tired smile. "Trip went well," he said, heading straight to his office without noticing much else. He kissed her cheek distractedly, like a habit rather than a moment of affection. She asked about the conference, and he answered in quick clipped phrases as he typed on his laptop. He didn't ask about her week. He didn't ask how she was feeling. It wasn't intentional. It simply never crossed his mind. Olivia watched him, feeling something gently crack inside her. It wasn't anger. It wasn't bitterness. It was sadness deep. Quiet sadness at how far apart they had grown while still sleeping under the same roof. She went to bed early that night, but sleep refused to come. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts drifting back to Ethan's words in the car. "You deserve to be seen." She had brushed the feeling away then, but now it settled into her heart in a way she couldn't ignore. 2 days later, when she opened her front door to bring in a package, she found a small paper bag sitting neatly on the mat. Inside were ginger tea, sachets, vitamin drops, and a folded note with simple handwriting. "Heard you had a rough night. Take care of yourself." Olivia stood there for a long moment, staring at the note. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't romantic. It was thoughtful, unexpectedly thoughtful. She held it tightly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Someone had noticed she wasn't okay. Someone had cared enough to leave something at her door without expecting anything back. The gesture was small, but it felt like a spark in a room that had been dark for too long. Later that evening, when Daniel came home, she considered telling him she hadn't felt well during the party. She thought about saying she felt overwhelmed or tired or even lonely. But when she started speaking, he cut in with a quick, "Can we talk later? I have a call in 5 minutes." So she stayed quiet. Again, that silence made the note from Ethan feel even louder in her mind. The next afternoon, just when she had convinced herself to stop overthinking everything, the doorbell rang. Olivia froze for a second. She hadn't ordered anything else. She wasn't expecting anyone. She wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and opened the door. Ethan stood there on the porch, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly tense like he wasn't sure if he should have come. He looked different tonight, calmer, but also uncertain, like he didn't want to create any trouble. "Hey," he said quietly, "I hope I'm not bothering you." "You're not," Olivia replied, surprised by how natural her voice sounded. "Come in." He stepped inside slowly, as if trying not to cross an invisible line. He glanced around the living room, then looked back at her. "I wasn't sure if I should check on you. I didn't want to overstep." "You didn't?" Olivia said. "The note. It meant a lot," Ethan nodded, his eyes softening. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay. You seemed really overwhelmed that night." He paused, then added, "And you didn't seem like yourself." Olivia felt her breath hitch slightly. "I haven't been myself for a while." He didn't push her to explain. He simply waited, giving her space to speak or stay silent. That patience alone made her chest tighten with something like relief. She walked to the couch and sat down, and he sat on the opposite end, keeping a respectful distance. For a moment, neither spoke. The air felt heavy but calm, like a quiet breath shared between two people who understood something without saying it out loud. "I'm not unhappy," Olivia said suddenly. "Not exactly. I just feel disconnected." Ethan studied her, concern shining through his expression. "From Daniel?" She nodded slowly. "He's always working, always moving. I feel guilty bringing it up because he does all of it for us. But I feel like I'm fading into the background, like I'm cheering for someone who doesn't see me in the crowd anymore." Ethan exhaled, leaning forward slightly. "That's not your fault, and it doesn't make you ungrateful to want more than just being there." Olivia looked at him, gratitude filling her eyes. He wasn't telling her what she wanted to hear. He was telling her what she needed to hear. The honesty felt like air after holding her breath for too long before she could respond. A sudden sound echoed from outside, a car door slamming shut. Olivia's heart jumped. She knew that sound. Daniel's car. He was home early. She and Ethan exchanged a startled look. Ethan stood quickly, instinctively stepping back from the couch, as if trying to create space before anyone misunderstood the moment. Olivia's pulse raced, not because anything inappropriate was happening, but because she wasn't ready for Daniel to see her heart exposed like this, vulnerable. Confused, emotional dot. The front door opened, and Daniel walked in with his usual hurried stride. "Hey, Laveau, Ethan," he said, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you." Ethan tried to smile casually. "Just checking in. Thought I'd stop by." Daniel nodded distractedly, already pulling out his phone. "Good to see you. I need to take a quick call." Olivia watched him walk away, feeling the familiar ache settle back into her chest distance. Distraction? The space she couldn't reach across anymore. When Daniel disappeared into his office, Ethan turned to her. His expression filled with apology and something deeper, understanding, sympathy, quiet sadness. "I didn't mean to make things complicated," he said softly. "You didn't," Olivia replied. "Life is complicated on its own." They stood there in the living room, silence stretching between them. Not uncomfortable, not forbidden, just real. Ethan stepped toward the door. "I should go." Olivia nodded. "Thank you for stopping by." He opened the door but paused before stepping out. "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm around. But I'll respect whatever lines you need." She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know." He stepped outside, closing the door gently behind him. Olivia leaned against it, feeling her heartbeat settle into a slow, heavy rhythm. She felt torn not between two people, but between two versions of herself. The one who stayed quiet and invisible, and the one who wanted to feel alive again. And for the first time in a long time, she realized she couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Something had shifted, something she could no longer ignore. Evelyn woke up the next morning with a heavy but steady heart. As if the hours of sleep had wrapped her in a soft blanket she didn't know she needed. Sunlight spilled through the curtains in gentle strips, touching her face and reminding her that today would not be like the others. Today she had to confront the truth she had been carrying for weeks. She sat up slowly, feeling her heart thump faster, because she already knew what she had to do, allow the truth to finally breathe instead of hiding it in the corners of her mind. Downstairs, the house was too quiet. She walked into the kitchen and found a note from Mark, written quickly before he left for work. "We need to talk tonight." The words were short, but they carried a weight she had been expecting. She folded the note carefully and placed it on the counter, then stared out the window as if answers might appear in the cold morning air. But nothing came except a quiet realization. The distance between them could no longer be ignored. Her phone buzzed. It was Liam. "Are you okay this morning?" His message said. Evelyn felt her breath slow. He had been the one to carry her the night she needed support the most. He had been the one who noticed the pain behind her forced smiles. He had been the one who listened without judging, without deflecting, without using her vulnerabilities against her. She typed a quick reply, "Yes, thank you," but she knew that something between them had shifted. Something invisible, yet undeniable. By afternoon, she couldn't sit still anymore. She walked around the living room, straightening pillows, cleaning a counter that wasn't dirty, moving from space to space as if trying to organize her emotions by organizing the house. She kept replaying the night of the work party, the moment she stumbled outside, the moment Liam reached for her, the moment she realized someone cared enough to see her clearly. But she also remembered her vows, her history with Mark, and all the years they had built together. She wasn't someone who walked away easily, and she couldn't let one night, no matter how emotional, aside everything. Evening came too fast. Before she knew it, she heard the sound of Mark's car door closing. Evelyn stood in the living room, hands clasped in front of her, stomach tight. The clock ticked on the wall like it was counting down. Mark walked in, looking tired but not angry, just serious. He took off his coat and placed it on the chair before finally meeting her eyes. "We do need to talk," Lee said quietly. She nodded and sat on the couch. He sat across from her instead of beside her, and that small distance felt bigger than she wanted it to be. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence was sharp and full of everything they had avoided. Finally, Mark exhaled. "You've been distant," he said. "Not just lately, for months. And I didn't want to push you, but last night, when Liam told me he helped you inside, I realized I haven't been paying attention. I haven't been there like I should have." Evelyn was surprised. She had expected blame, maybe frustration, but his tone was gentle. "I'm sorry that you've been feeling alone," he continued. "I should have seen it." Emotion rose in her chest. "It wasn't just you," she whispered. "I've been hiding things because I didn't know how to say them. I didn't want to create conflict." Mark leaned forward slightly. "Tell me." She swallowed, gathering her strength. "I felt like we stopped being partners. I felt like I was becoming invisible. And last night, when I came home, I wasn't myself. And Liam, he helped me because he noticed what you didn't." Mark's jaw tightened for a moment, but not with anger, more like concern, trying to understand. "Are you saying you have feelings for him?" The question hung between them like a fragile thread. Evelyn shook her head slowly. "I'm saying I felt seen. And that scared me. Because I shouldn't have needed someone else to make me feel that way." Mark relaxed a little, though the tension still sat in his shoulders. "I don't want to lose you," he said. "But I know something needs to change. We've been drifting apart, and I kept thinking it would fix itself." Oh. She felt tears rise. "I don't want to lose us either," she whispered. "But I also don't want to pretend everything is fine when it isn't." They sat in silence again. But this time it felt like the beginning of honesty rather than the end of something. Mark ran a hand through his hair. "I think we both need time," he said. "Time to breathe. Time to figure out what we want. Not just what we're supposed to want." Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. "Maybe you're right." At that moment, footsteps sounded on the porch. The door opened gently, and Liam stepped in after knocking. He looked surprised to see them both sitting together, mid-conversation. "Oh," he said awkwardly, "I didn't know you were both here. I just came to check if Evelyn was feeling better." Sincerity was clear, not pushy, not invasive, just concerned. Mark stood. "We're talking," he said calmly, "but thank you for looking out for her last night." Liam nodded, but his eyes searched Evelyn's for confirmation that she was truly okay. She offered a small smile. "I'm all right," she said. "Thank you." Hesitated, as if wanting to say more, but he didn't. Instead, he stepped back toward the door. "If either of you need anything, I'm around." When he stepped outside, the house felt quieter. But not empty, the kind of quiet filled with decisions waiting to be made. Mark turned back toward Evelyn. "We're not ending this," he said softly, "but we need to rebuild it. From the ground up, and that means honesty. Real honesty." She wiped a tear. "I want that too. I want something real. I want us to feel like partners again." He sat beside her this time, and though they didn't hold hands, the shift felt meaningful. They talked for hours. Willie talked a way they hadn't in years. They shared fears, regrets, hopes. They admitted mistakes without attacking each other. They agreed to counseling. They agreed to more communication and less avoiding. They agreed to start over, step by step. When the night grew late, Evelyn walked upstairs feeling lighter. Not because everything was solved, but because everything was finally spoken. She stood by the window and looked at the quiet neighborhood. At the porch light across the street, where Liam's shadow moved faintly, she whispered a quiet thank you to the night that changed. Everything not because it ruined her life, but because it forced her to face it. Her story wasn't ending. It was shifting, growing, evolving. And for the first time in a long time, Evelyn felt ready to move forward, wherever forward might lead.